My neighbor has kept a garden going for 31 years without a single weed in it, and last spring she finally told me what she does every evening before she goes in for supper. It is not vinegar. It is not salt. And it is nothing you would ever buy in one of those jugs with the skull on the label. I took a photo of my own front bed back in early May, all creeping Charlie and crabgrass coming up through the mulch, and if you saw that same bed today, you would not believe it was the same piece of ground. That whole change came from one thing that is sitting in near every American kitchen right now, and hardly a soul thinks to carry it out to the garden. I know just what you are thinking, because I thought it too. Another one of those internet tricks that works fine in a video and does nothing at all in a real yard. I thought exactly that, right up until I watched it happen with my own two eyes over one long summer. But before I tell you what the thing is, let me be honest about what most of our gardens look like come spring, and why near everything you have tried so far has quit on you by July. I am Amos Byler. I farm a piece of ground in Holmes County, Ohio, and I have been fighting weeds one way or another for the better part of 40 years. Weeds are the one trouble that plagues every last gardener alive, rich soil or poor, north or south. That never-ending war that starts up in March and drags clear to November. And I mean to show you today how to win it. Not for a week, not for a month, for the whole season through. Look at your own garden a minute, hand on your heart. How many of you have a bed that comes up in spring looking like a green carpet of things you never planted? Most of you, I would wager. And it is not because you are lazy, and it is not because you are a poor gardener. It is just how the ground works. Weed seeds are everywhere. In the dirt, in the wind, tracked in on your boots, blown over the fence off the neighbor's lot, dropped by the birds off the wire. 1 square foot of ordinary garden dirt holds thousands of weed seeds, and some of them will lie down there patient for 10, 15, 20 years, waiting for their one chance. A little light, a little wet. That is all they want. And up comes the army. I have gardened a long time, and in all those years I have tried near everything a man can try. I started where everybody starts, down on my knees pulling by hand. Hours of it, with my back gone stiff and my fingers raw, and a week later the whole bed was green again like I had never touched it. Then I went to the sprays, the glyphosate, that famous jug that was supposed to end the whole business. And I will not tell you it does not work, for it does. But do you know what we have learned about that stuff in the last few years? The cancer research arm of the World Health Organization put glyphosate down as a probable human carcinogen back in 2015. And the studies since keep showing the same thing besides that it kills off the very soil life you need for anything at all to grow. You kill the weed and you kill the ground right along with it. That is no cure. That is trading one trouble for a worse one you cannot see. So I put the jug down and I went to the kitchen recipes, same as half of you have. Straight vinegar, boiling water off the kettle, salt, vinegar and salt and dish soap all stirred together. And some of it works for a day or 3. Vinegar will burn the top off a weed, sure enough. But it only ever touches what stands above the dirt. The root sits down there untouched, and inside of 10 days you have got a fresh green weed grinning up at you out of the very same spot. And salt, well, salt kills weeds fine, and it kills everything else with them, and it kills the ground itself for 2 or 3 years after. Pour salt on a bed and you have made yourself a patch of moon dust where not a thing will grow. So there I was, wore out and half resigned, telling myself weeds belong to a garden like rain and hard frost, and there was no help for it. But then, my neighbor changed the whole of it for me. She is a widow woman, past 70, and she has tended the plot behind her place for over 30 years. And her garden is another world entirely. Clean dirt between the rows, paths without a blade in the cracks, and no weeds, not one. For years I told myself she was just lucky, or she had better dirt, or she was out there dawn to dusk while I was at my own work. It is always easier to make an excuse for the other fellow's luck than to walk over and ask him how he does it. But one Saturday I finally swallowed my pride and walked across, And she smiled and told me the whole of it right there over her coffee. Plain as anything, no secret about it. And what she told me was so simple and so cheap that I about laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because I had spent all those years hunting a hard answer while the easy one sat in my own pantry the whole time. The thing my neighbor uses is plain baking soda. That is all. The same little box you have got in the cupboard right now for $1 and change. Sodium bicarbonate. The same white powder your grandmother folded into her cornbread. But mind me close, because it is not a matter of just shaking the box out over a weed. That works about halfway, and no better. My neighbor has her own mix, worked out over 30 years, and I will give it to you now just the way she gave it to me. So fetch a pencil, or mark this down. You need 4 things, and you have them all in the house. First, the baking soda. About 1.5 cups, which is near a whole box of the common kind. Second, a good quart of hot water. Not boiling, just hot, somewhere around 150 degrees. Not boiling, mind, for a hard boil will break down some of the soda before it ever reaches the leaf. Hot is right. The soda dissolves clean in it and keeps its strength. Third, 1 tablespoon of plain dish soap. Whatever bottle sits by your sink, the brand and the color do not matter a whit. And fourth, the one that most of the internet recipes leave clean out, 2 tablespoons of ordinary kitchen vinegar. Not the strong horticultural kind, just the plain jug you keep for pickling. The making of it takes half a minute. Pour the soda into the hot water and stir till it is all dissolved. Add the spoon of dish soap, add the 2 spoons of vinegar, stir it gentle, and you are done. A whole quart of weed killer for what? A quarter's worth of soda and a splash of the rest. A garden store would sell you that same quart under some fancy name with a smiling lady on the label for $8 or $10. And that quart will do you 10 or 12 square feet of ground. Now let me tell you why it works. For I know some of you are sitting there thinking baking soda on a weed sounds like foolishness. But the science holds. The sodium bicarbonate does 2 things to a weed at once. When it lands on the leaf, it drives the surface strongly alkaline, and most every common weed, your dandelion, your creeping Charlie, your plantain, wants a slightly sour, slightly acid leaf to live. Spike that alkaline all of a sudden, and the leaf cells cannot bear it and start to die back. And second, the sodium pulls the water right out of the weed cells, the way salt draws water out of a slug. The plant dries out from the inside. And the vinegar there does the opposite job, and that is the clever part. It is not there to fight the soda. The vinegar cuts through the waxy skin on the leaf. Every weed leaf wears a thin, waxy coat that sheds water and keeps things out, and the vinegar breaches that coat and opens the road for the soda to get down into the cells where it does its work. And the dish soap is a wetter, plain and simple. Without it, your mix beads up on the leaf and rolls off onto the dirt. With it, the mix lays down flat over the whole leaf like a film, every last bit of it covered, no dry spot to hide in. So you have got 3 things working at once. The vinegar opens the door. The soap spreads the coverage. The soda dries the plant dead. Any one of the 3 the weed would shrug off. All 3 together, it has got no chance. Now, here is the mistake near everybody makes with this. The one thing you must get right or you will do real harm. This mix does not know a weed from your tomato. It kills every green thing it touches. So it matters more than anything exactly where you put it. You do not spray this out over a bed. You spray it right onto the weed and nothing else. On the dandelion, you set the nozzle to a stream, not a mist, and you shoot it straight into the middle of the rosette, where all the leaves come together, so it runs down the stem to the crown of the root. On the running weeds like creeping Charlie, you wet down the leaves good and you wet the dirt right around them too, so the mix works down toward the shallow runners underneath. And you do all this on a dry evening, no rain coming for a day, because the morning dew waters it down and the noon sun dries it off before it can work. Evening is the golden hour. The sun is off it, the dew is not down yet, and the mix has the whole night to do its business. And here is a quiet truth nobody selling you a jug will ever say out loud. On a weed with a deep taproot, like a good stubborn dandelion or a bindweed, one spraying will not always finish it. Those weeds keep a store of strength down in the root and can push up a fresh shoot. You will have to come back after a week and hit it again, 2 or 3 times over, before it gives up for good. Each time you will see it weaker, the leaves gone yellow, the stems gone brittle, until finally it quits. Now, let me be honest with you about where this thing came from, because it did not start with my neighbor, and it did not start on the internet. It is a great deal older than that. Baking soda has been dug and sold in this country for near 200 years, and folks have known its power against green things for a long, long while. The plain trouble is there is no money in it. No company can put a patent on baking soda. No man can own it or charge dear for it, for anybody can walk into any store and buy the box for $1. So no business advertises it, and no business teaches it, and it slipped quiet out of the common knowing while the bright jugs got all the shouting. That is the whole of why you never heard it. Not from any scheme, just because nobody made $1 by the telling. But here is the part worth staying for, the part my neighbor does that nobody else does, and it is the real reason her garden looks like a picture all season while everybody else is back on their knees by August. Killing the weed you can see is only half the work. Keeping the next crop from ever coming up is the other half, and the harder half, and that is where mulch comes in. Mulch is just a blanket you lay over the bare dirt, and it does 2 jobs. It shuts the light off from all those thousands of seeds down in the soil, and a seed with no light will not sprout, and it holds the moisture in besides, so you water less. What you use depends on where. For the cracks in a walk or a drive, after you have sprayed them clean, my neighbor sweeps a mix of plain sand and baking soda down into the cracks. About 10 parts sand to 1 of soda, and that keeps the cracks bare all season. For the flower beds, a good layer of bark, 2 or 3 inches deep, laid down thick. For the vegetable rut like thous, where bark would sour the ground on you, use straw or dried grass clippings instead, 3 or 4 inches around the plants. The straw is cheap, it lays down easy, it chokes the weeds out, and it rots down into the dirt and feeds it besides. So the whole system runs like this. Early in the spring, soon as the weeds first show, you spray them all down with the soda mix. You give it a week, you clean out the dead, and then you lay your mulch over the clean ground. My neighbor told me one thing that has stuck with me ever since. She said a garden is like a house. You can mop the floor a little every single day, or you can do one good deep scrubbing and then just keep it up. She does the deep scrubbing once, and then she only maintains it. And that is the whole difference between her garden and mine used to be. So there it is, baking soda for the killing. 1.5 cups to 1 quart of hot water with a spoon of dish soap and 2 of vinegar. The evening spraying, aimed careful, weed, and nothing else. A second and a third go on the stubborn, deep-rooted ones, and then the mulch laid down thick to keep the next generation from ever seeing daylight. Bark on the flowers, straw on the vegetables, sand and soda in the cracks. Do that, and you will spend a few hours the whole season on weeds instead of a few hours every single weekend, and you will have that time back for the growing, which is the part a body actually loves. Tell me down in the comments, which weed is winning the war in your own garden this year? The bindweed, or the crabgrass, or the creeping Charlie that will not die, and I will gladly help you puzzle out how to deal with your particular trouble. And tell me your county and your climate while you are at it, for the weeds run different from the wet south to the dry high country, and I like to keep a map of it in my head from where you all write from. I read every one that comes in. The best gardening advice I ever got in 40 years did not come off the internet, and it did not come off a store shelf. It came from a woman past 70, with 30 years of dirt under her nails and a cup of coffee in her hand, over a fence I had been too proud to walk across for a decade. There is a lesson in that reaches a good deal past the garden. The answer you have been hunting for years is often held by the person you see every day, if only you will set your pride down long enough to ask. The old people knew that, and I believe we are only now, slow and late, beginning to remember it. Take care of your ground, and may nothing grow in it but what you meant to plant.